The morning sun had just begun to spill across the rolling Texas plains, painting the sky in streaks of gold and pink. Inside the old ranch house, silence hung heavy, broken only by the faint clinking of pans in the kitchen. John Callahan, a weathered rancher in his late 50s, sat at the wooden dining table, staring into a mug of coffee gone cold. His hands were rough from years of hard work, but it wasn't the physical labor that wore him down these days, it was the quiet. Ever since his wife, Mary, had passed 2 years ago, silence had become his most unwelcome companion. The ranch was large, too large for a man alone, and the kitchen, once filled with Mary's humming and the smell of fresh biscuits, now seemed like an echo of a life that had slipped away. John wasn't the kind of man to complain. He carried his grief like he carried everything else, quietly, with the strength of someone who'd been taught early in life that tears didn't plow fields and sorrow didn't mend fences. But he missed her every single day. This morning was different, though. When John pushed open the door to the kitchen, he noticed the new house helper, a young woman named Emily, standing by the stove. She had been recommended by the local pastor as someone who needed work, someone just trying to get back on her feet. She was only 23, her hair tied in a messy bun, her hands moving swiftly as she scrambled eggs. From behind, she looked fine, even composed. But when she turned her face slightly toward the window, John saw it, her cheeks were wet with tears. At first, he didn't say anything. He wasn't used to intruding on another's pain. Grief had taught him to respect silence, to allow sorrow its own space. But something about the sight of her crying in his kitchen, the same kitchen where he had wept in the dark nights after Mary's passing, stirred something deep in him. He cleared his throat softly, not to startle her but to remind her she wasn't alone. Emily froze. She wiped at her face quickly with the back of her hand, forcing a small smile as she set the pan on the stove. "Sorry, Mr. Callahan," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to." "You don't have to apologize," John said gently, his voice low and steady. "Tears don't hurt a kitchen." For a moment, the room felt suspended in time. Emily stared down at her hands, twisting the hem of her apron. She had wanted to appear strong, dependable. Work was scarce, and she needed this job desperately. But the truth was harder to hide than she'd hoped. John studied her face, noticing how young she looked, yet how heavy her eyes seemed, eyes that had seen more than a girl her age should. He took a sip of his coffee, then set the mug down. "Emily," he said softly, "what's weighing on you?" At first, she hesitated. But something in his tone, firm yet kind, the tone of a man who had weathered storms and still stood, made her chest ache with a sudden, overwhelming desire to tell the truth. So she did. "My mom died last winter," Emily whispered, her voice cracking. "I've been trying to keep it together for my little brother. He's only 12. I thought I could manage, but, some days it feels impossible. We don't have much. I don't know how long I can hold everything together." Her confession filled the room, raw and trembling. John's heart clenched. He remembered the nights after Mary died, when he had sat in this very kitchen, staring at the door she would never walk through again. He knew the weight of loss, the way it hollowed a person from the inside out. He also knew the lonely courage it took to admit you were struggling. John leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady on her. "You're stronger than you think," he said slowly. "But even the strongest need a hand sometimes." Emily blinked, tears brimming again. "I don't want pity, Mr. Callahan. I just need work. I'll do my best." He shook his head. "This isn't about pity. It's about family. You're carrying a load too big for one pair of shoulders. I know what that feels like." Silence lingered, heavy yet tender. Then John made a decision that would change both of their lives. "Emily," he said, his voice steady, "from now on, this ranch isn't just my home. It's yours too. Bring your brother here. He needs space to grow, and you need a place where you're not fighting every battle alone." Her head snapped up, eyes wide in disbelief. You mean that?" John nodded, the lines on his face deepening with sincerity. "I lost my wife, Emily. And I thought the good years of family life were behind me. But maybe, just maybe, God has other plans. Maybe He put you in this kitchen, on this ranch, for a reason." The dam inside her broke. Emily covered her face with her hands, sobbing, not with despair this time, but with relief. She had walked into this job expecting nothing more than a paycheck. Instead, she had found something she thought she'd lost forever: hope. Over the next weeks, everything changed. Emily's brother, Daniel, came to live on the ranch. At first, he was shy, keeping his eyes low and speaking little. But soon, with the wide open fields to run in, horses to ride, and a man like John taking him under his wing, Daniel began to bloom. He smiled more. He laughed. He even started calling John Uncle John, a title that warmed the old rancher's heart in ways he hadn't expected. Emily flourished too. No longer burdened by the fear of losing everything, she poured her heart into her work and into caring for the ranch as if it were her own home. She filled the kitchen with warmth again, singing softly while she cooked, just like Mary used to. John often found himself lingering by the doorway, not out of loneliness this time, but because he cherished the sound of life returning to his house. But the true moment of transformation came one late evening. A storm had rolled in, rattling the windows and filling the air with thunder. Daniel had a nightmare, waking in tears, calling for his mother. Emily rushed to comfort him, but it was John who sat on the edge of the boy's bed, his weathered hand resting on the child's shoulder. "Son," John whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "I know what it's like to lose someone you love. It hurts in a way that never fully leaves. But you're not alone anymore. You've got your sister. And you've got me. I'll be here as long as you'll have me." Daniel sniffled, looking up at him with wide, searching eyes. "You promise?" John smiled, his throat tight. "I promise." That night, as the storm raged outside, something mended inside the walls of that old ranch house. A broken family found new roots, not by blood, but by choice. Years later, people in town would often talk about the Callahan Ranch, the place where a widowed rancher, a struggling young woman, and her little brother built something extraordinary out of the ashes of loss. They weren't bound by name or lineage, but by love, resilience, and the unshakable belief that kindness can change everything. John often said, "I thought I was just giving them a home. Truth is, they gave me back my life." And that was the heart of it. One act of compassion, offered quietly in a kitchen on an ordinary morning, had created a legacy of hope that would last for generations. Because sometimes, the smallest decision, to open your heart, to share your table, to wipe away someone else's tears, can change a life forever. And sometimes, it can change your own.